Hello and welcome to the Republic of Football. I'm your host, Ishmael Johnson, here alongside, or I guess on Zoom, with Carter Yates and Mike Craven. Mike Craven, of course, the senior writer here. Dave Campbell's Carter Yates, staff writer here. All right, boys, we're starting to get inching closer and closer and closer to the season. You guys were out at some practices. I asked you last week how it was to be back out there. You know, is there anything? I don't know. Do you ever have that moment of like you blink and it's August 12th, right? And you're like, oh damn, like it was Craven. You were just in New Orleans like yesterday. It felt like,
Yeah, it goes. It's like waiting for a roller coaster. It takes
yeah.
forever. Then you're on it. It lasts for about a minute, and then it takes forever again. I don't know if y'all grew up watching Monty Python, but there's a scene in Holy
Mhm.
Grail where there's a guy running towards the gates, and he's like forever away for like
Yeah.
10. They keep flashing back to him, and he's still running, and then all of a sudden he's just there cutting their heads off. Like that's
Yeah.
how football season kind of feels to me.
The days are long, but the years are short. So in the middle of July, when you're talking about conference realignment and courtroom decisions, it feels like when is this ever going to end? And then you blink and you're in August again. Football's back, baby.
Yeah. So we're gonna continue with kind of our preview episode or preview series, I should say. Of course, if you missed the group of five and the power five stuff we talked about some storylines last week involving some teams which teams I should say have the best chances to win their conference. Go listen to those episodes. This week we're going to be breaking down a little bit of some injury news first off. Then we're going to talk about a position groups, I should say, that could make or break some teams' seasons, right? Kind of one of the teams in the state that some teams in the state, I should say, that maybe hinge a little bit too much or maybe could hinge a little bit too much on certain position groups. We'll be talking about those. And in the back half, Texas State head coach GJ Kinne sat down with Carter and Craven, and they talked to him for about 15, 20 minutes. So we're going to have that in the back half. So please stick around for that. Of course, as you guys know, as the season approaches, we like to get all these coaches on and kind of, shoot with us and see what they got. Obviously, it's different for me, at least when you go to practice and you get them after practice in an interview, right? They're very much in a different mentality. They just come back. They're very politicized and they're very, very by the book versus sitting down on Zoom or in person or whatever and just chatting. And so that's kind of what we like to do with these interviews leading up to the season. All right. Let's go into the injury news. We had some unfortunate news for a number of Texas programs last week. Let's start off with the top: Texas and Texas A&M. Backfield injuries. C.J. Baxter and Ruben Owens for Texas and Texas A&M. One guy that was supposed to start, one guy that was supposed to be very much in the rotation. Out for the season, practice injuries. One, I believe the latest one was Owens on Saturday during their A&M scrimmage. Both confirmed to be out for the year. I mean, let's start with CJ Baxter first because he was the projected starter. How much of a blow is this? Or is this, something that's like, oh, this is one that Texas can maybe handle? Obviously, personally, for CJ Baxter, devastating injury, but
Yeah, I think it's a very solid body blow. It's not a knockout punch. But CJ Baxter is a guy Sark was going to lean on. Quietly, Steve Sarkisian's more balanced than his reputation would lead you on. He's had an 1,000-yard rusher every single season he's called plays. Jaden Blue's a very talented player. He has fewer than 100 carries in his college career. He's not somebody who is going to carry the load for 2025. He's not built like Baxter. Baxter was the big back. The one on 3rd and 1 to go get a short yardage, the one at 3rd and goal to go get an end zone. By the way, those are two areas Texas struggled with offensively, was going and getting those kind of tough yards. So now the running back room's a little bit smaller. Trey Wisner, not a huge guy either, even though he runs really hard. They got some freshmen behind there that may break into the rotation the way Baxter did last year. But you lose Jonathan Brooks to the NFL. Now you lose C.J. Baxter to injury. At the wide receiver position, you lose 4 out of your top 5 wide receivers from last year, including the tight end. And so there's just a lot of production that is no longer in that huddle. I think there's plenty of talent, but there's not a ton of experience in a lot of ways outside the offensive line and the quarterback. This is a completely different unit that is going to be lining up against Colorado State than last year started the season.
Yeah, the only thing that could take more damage than the Texas FBS teams is this control room after I start mashing buttons around it here. There's so many. I'm at total mission control. in this area. But look, I think CJ Baxter, he was starting last year over Jonathan Brooks. Before that, Brooks kind of Wally pipped him and took over. I don't think either of the freshmen that Texas has right now are of his level that CJ Baxter was last year going into fall camp. And like Craven said, I really like Jaden Blue a lot. He averaged over 6 yards per carry last year. It felt like they took the Ferrari out of the garage. He just had a different speed level to him. I don't know if Jaden Blue's the guy that can take 90% of your carries. And maybe he doesn't need to be, but I don't like the depth right now in this running back room compared to what it even used to be with Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks, Rojan Johnson. That's like maybe the one area of Texas's team that I'd almost take 2021 over 2024 in.
I do wonder if we see Sark find new faces, right? Like there's a few options here. Jaden Blue is a guy who ends up carrying the ball 20 times a game and stays healthy, and we all look dumb. A couple of those young freshmen really do step up, or just even one of those young freshmen steps up along with Trey Wisner, and they're okay at running back in the way that they were last year when we thought they would take a big step back without Bijan and Roshan. Or 3, Sark just leans on the third-year starting quarterback and just airs this thing out 55 times a game and just goes kind of old school spread, Colt McCoy, a swing pass, a 2-yard pass, and see if your wide receiver can break that 70. That's our run game. Screen game, quick passing game. That's going to be our run game. We have a really good quarterback we like. We have an offensive line that we like. I always assume rushing is as much, if not more, about the offensive line than the running back. I will take a really good offensive line and an average running back room over a really good running back room and an average offensive line. I think Texas has a great offensive line, and maybe that alleviates a little bit of a talent gap at running back now that they've lost their stud.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot. You mentioned those running backs. Jared Gibson, of course, being the highly touted one out of the group, right? The 5-star guy from IMG. Of course, you have Christian Clark, high 4-star from Arizona, similar to, I believe Bijan was also from Arizona as well. Trey Wisner, a guy who is a little bit forgotten about, right? I think we'll definitely see, I think somebody like Gibson, right, come in a little bit. Obviously, I think Jaden Blue will start the season, but of course, it like Carter mentioned last year, right? There always is that kind of second guy. Last year it happened to be Jonathan Brooks, and then Jaden Blue later in the year as kind of a gadget player. There's always somebody else that kind of emerges in that backfield because Craven, like you mentioned, Sark's a balanced guy, right? He likes to run the ball. He likes to give different looks to the running game. I wonder if, to leaning on your point about how leaning on his third-year quarterback, I agree with that because of Jaden Blue's skill set, right? If you have Jaden Blue and you say, if you're not comfortable giving him 20 rushes, okay, what about 8 catches, right? What about 12 carries and 8 catches? Maybe. Also, you look at the receiving core. We've talked about how, there's some young guys in there, obviously, like Ryan Wingo, but okay, let's talk about the 4 guys ahead of it, right? The veteran guys, the Jonte Cooks, who maybe are supposed to take a step forward. Let's talk about the Amari Neeblacks, the Gunnar Helms, right? They're like 8 potential pass catchers on this team that Sark could just say, yeah, you know what? We'll just, until Jaden Blue and maybe Jared Gibson comes in later in the season, right? In terms of gets used to these carries and kind of gets, maybe let's throw some teams off balance a little bit. Yeah, maybe for the first month, we do see Quinn Ewers averaging 40 to 50 passes a game. I don't know if they'll go that far, but I do see your point about maybe them leaning on the guy that's going to be in the NFL potentially next year.
Well, between that, switching up the offense to pass more, and then also just who they have in this running back room. This might be an insane thing to say, but I think I'm not as much worried about the loss of on-field production as I am worried about the loss of leadership in that room, because not even with CJ Baxter's injury, but just with Jonathan Brooks leaving, Trey Wisner went on the Third and Longhorn podcast. They do great work. I see them on Twitter all the time, but he talked about how, Jonathan Brooks used to go through the jugs machine, like the thing where you run through and all the things are slapping you on the side. He did it 15 times. And Trey Wisner literally thought practice was going to be over because that was so hard for him to do. And then he went and had a full practice after that and just went balls to the wall. So I don't know if there's that type of player in Texas running back room right now. And of course, maybe they emerge, but right now that's a question mark for me.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's not bad. By the way, some stats on some of these guys. CJ Baxter last year, 659 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns on 138 carries, almost 5 yards a carry. Jadon Blue, almost 400 yards on the ground, 135 yards through the air on 14 catches, averaged about 6 yards on the ground, of course, in the kind of with that triple-headed backfield that they kind of had sometimes.
CJ Baxter was never healthy last year either. Like he was gimpy the entire year.
He was hurt. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's talk about the other one. Ruben Owens. This one came down yesterday, Sunday. We're recording on Monday. I mean, this one's another blow. It's obviously he wasn't expected to start, but A&M, one of A&M's strengths on offense was going to be the depth of this backfield. And he's a former 5-star player, right? He was a 5-star, according to our guy, Greg Powers here, DCTF. Big get for them, right? Originally a Louisville commit. They flipped him and they were able to get him in house. He played last year, right? I believe 5 starts as a freshman. And you kind of hoped he would take a next step. He had over 700 yards all purpose last year. And you kind of were hoping, okay, let's see what we can get with a new offense, new head coach, new regime. And I mean, I think you guys wrote about it, how you can go check out the piece by now about what this means for A&M. You guys touched on it about like why this isn't like a devastating injury, but like, it feels like A&M doesn't have much room for error in Mike Elko's first year.
And you can never have a shortage of the big play, go get you a touchdown out of a 5-yard run. I mean, those guys are the difference makers. Those are the game breakers. And A&M has a good stable of running backs. Amari Daniels is a good player. Le'Veon Moss is a good player. You bring in Emmitt Smith's son to be kind of a third guy there. Also, EJ. I was blanking on his name for a second. Yeah. And so I think that they're going to be okay running the football, but Owens was the X factor. Owens was the big play guy. On third down, he can be a gadget player. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a good kickoff returner. That's also another dimension. And I think Colin Klein's going to play multiple running backs. He's going to play, some 12 personnel a couple of times, and I think he would have found a role there. It is a loss. You don't want to lose a guy that talented. I don't think it's as big of a loss as CJ Baxter. But still definitely a loss for the Aggies. And it may not be the first one, right? We haven't even gotten to the games yet. This is a violent sport. Like there's going to be other guys that get hurt. If they're already falling off in August, what does that depth look like in November?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I think Ruben Owens was just the guy with the highest ceiling who you thought had the most breakout potential. I put him on the most intriguing player for all the FBS teams. He was Texas A&M's most intriguing player. So I totally agree with Craven. Not as devastating as CJ Baxter for the role that he was going to play in the offense, but maybe to what the ceiling could have been. That's very devastating of those 3 running backs.
Yeah. And of course you mentioned EJ Smith. Of course, his role now becomes a lot bigger, over 500 yards as at Stanford, over 5 yards a carry. I think he was kind of more of an unsung pickup that A&M got that I'm kind of more interested in. Definitely.
Well, 500 yards in how many years though? Because that's a career stat for 4 years.
Is that a career stat? I can't remember if that was a career stat. Or
was it 500 yards for 4? Because this is what all the transfer.
Oh yeah, that is true. That is true. That is sorry. Yes, you are right. They do the whole PR package thing. That was in 4 years. He had 500 yards. So yes, let's see. In 2023, he had 386. So he did some stuff last year. There you go. Actually, hold on. Nope, that is wrong. He had 218. So it keeps going down. So,
okay, we'll stop there.
Yeah, we'll stop there before he gets to he played in 2 games. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, like you mentioned, EJ Smith will definitely be more of a factor now for A&M. All right, last one, then we're done with the doom and gloom segment. Dylan Spencer, Texas Tech. He's out for the year as well, knee injury. McGuire confirmed it to Don Williams of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. Oh boy, for a team that does not need injuries at all, this one sucks. I mean, obviously it's not as devastating as somebody that we, knock on wood for like the quarterback position or something, but regardless, every time you hear injury in Texas Tech, your heart kind of like stops. You're like, oh, what's happening now?
Yeah, Dylan Spencer was going to be one of their frontline edge rushers, going to be out for the season. They were going to do it by committee. This isn't losing Tyree Wilson. Like this isn't losing Von Miller. Those were guys Tim DeRuyter has coached before. So it was going to be more of a group effort. But kind of like we were talking about with A&M's running back game, like that moves the 3rd guy now to 2 and the 2 guy now to 1 and the 4 guy now to 3. You pick up another injury and you're down to a 3rd string guy, right? Or a 4th string guy. So it can chain that way. Joseph Adedire, I think I said that right. I butcher names pretty famously on the show.
Sounded right.
Thank you.
You said it confidently.
Right. That's really the key. He's going to be a good player off the edge. Dylan Harvey or Harvey Dyson, another player off the edge. Charles Estes. They have some guys there to come off the edge, and they're going to need it. Defensively, team's been pretty solid the last couple of years, and given what the offense is going to be, I think that they're going to be asked to. I think they're going to be asked to do more defensively this year. It's going to be more of a run game, control the ball, play some defense. Maybe win in the second half type stuff for the Red Raiders. So a loss, definitely a loss for the edge for the pass rush on this team.
This one feels similar to Texas A&M's Ruben Owens in that it was a player that was recruited 2 years ago as a top 100 player in Texas. And you saw flashes last year. They didn't redshirt, but you were expecting a lot more from them this upcoming season. And Texas Tech, the defense has been good, been a lot better than Tim DeRuyter, but they ranked 72nd nationally with 2 sacks a game and 83rd nationally with 5.4 tackles per loss per game. So they weren't creating a lot of havoc along the pass rush. I just think fall camp injuries are so devastating, like we talked about, because it's not even, you didn't even see him in a game yet, and there will be more injuries after this. But Craven, having been to fall camp practices, I want everyone to know this is not happening because teams are being way too physical in fall camp. Like, these all just feel like kind of freak injuries sometimes. I mean, I don't know what else the teams can do to stop injuries from happening in fall camp. It seems like they're doing everything possible to butt press instead of going fully to the ground all the time. They're wearing the padding on the helmet now. They're not tackling as much. I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah, I don't think there's much you can do. I mean, this is the sport of football. A lot of them are plant injuries. You just plant on a thing wrong, and then all of a sudden something's torn. I think that's what happened to both running backs. Don't I'm not reporting anything on that, but I think they were more kind of those plant, and all of a sudden your legs kind of doing a wrong thing type of injury. Landing, there's always a shoulder or two. Collarbone or something like that happens as well during fall camp because you just land wrong. I do think a lot from the coaches I've talked to, this is kind of a side rant, but the coaches I've talked to are getting back more to some physicality in fall camp. You kind of walked away from it as the transfer portal came about, and you don't want to run guys off, and it's more of a professional model these days. And to Carter's point, I mean, it's not like they're hitting like the 80s or 90s. Like, it's relative. Right. They're trying to just reinstill a bit of that, because I think we've seen tackling fall off. We've seen more injuries in week 1. You can only practice football with football. And at some point, I mean, you're going to have to just see who survives. And hopefully they get back quicker. Right. And it's unfortunate that the 3 we've talked about are more season-ending injuries, but there's some piling up behind the scenes that we don't even know about, right? The bumps and bruises, just because, that's the sport that we're covering.
Yeah. Don Williams did say, Don of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, Spencer's was a non-contact injury, first or second day, he said, of practice. So, just one of those, like you said, planted wrong, landed wrong, whatever. And it's like, that's sometimes that'll just do it. All right, let's move on to our little discussion topic before we get to our talk with GJ Kinne. Position groups. We're talking a little bit about position groups with running backs and offensive lines, defensive lines, things like that. The topic for today is what position group could undo one of the better teams in the state. We talked a little bit about the teams we think have the best shot last week to win their conference. Let's talk about some of those teams, add in some other teams, and talk about what's a position group that could make or break their season. We each picked one. I will go first, since we were talking about a little bit about A&M. Talk a little bit about A&M's offensive line, because if you want to nail down where Jimbo Fisher on the field, in my opinion, where Jimbo Fisher's tenure went wrong, I think it was when he could not sustain an offensive line despite recruiting well, despite having a lot of other positions locked up. And it led to quarterbacks getting hurt. It led to your offense not being able to move the ball. I think obviously there's a cavalcade of reasons, but when you look back at the offensive line that they recruited so insanely well, could not develop into being a unit that could sustain itself in the SEC. That is the unit to me, because I think they'll be good. I think they'll be okay. I wonder what happens if they just fall below that expectation, right? Adam Cushing comes in, I believe, is their new offensive line coach. And he has some work cut out for him. I think Trey Zune is going to be a great foundation block on that left side. I think the tackles are going to be okay. I think they're going to be fine. Interior, we'll see, right? I think Fathery on the right side is going to be pretty okay. But I do wonder about Chase Basantis, Mark Nobu Jr., Are those guys the Kansas transfer? I believe Armaj Reed Adams as well. I wonder. I really wonder, man, because you look back at those A&M years. Bryce Foster couldn't stay healthy, and you saw what happens when he didn't stay healthy and couldn't really develop as much as he wanted to. You saw how much they just got pushed around. And so, in my opinion, if A&M struggles in the interior, in particular, I think they're in for a very, very bad year.
Yeah, here's Mike Elko on the offensive line. He says it's improved from the spring, but said from where we were to where we are, it would be hard to stand here in front of you and tell you it's a strength. I think it will be a strength at some point in Mike Elko's tenure. Probably not this year.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the right tackle position. Mark Naboo at center. It's a big dude. As long as he can figure out the snapping stuff, I think he's gonna slide in there. Chase Bisontis played right tackle a lot last year. He's now at guard, and I think that's going to help him a lot. He's an experienced guy. Him and Trey Zune left tackle, Chase Bisontis left guard. That's going to be the strength of this offensive line. As I mentioned, Mark Naboo at center. Armaj Reed Adams is going to play. I was at a A&M practice last week. He was the most dominant force on that offensive line. Like, he is bullying people around. He is a nasty, nasty dude. I mean that complimentary. He was playing a little right tackle with the first team. And to me, that doesn't happen if you believe Ruben Fathery or Demetrius Crownover is ironed into that spot, because both of them were practicing as well. And this is just a practice open to the media, so they know what we're seeing, and they probably, they're not. None of this is written in stone, right? Like, you're just trying to see where guys are playing. But when you're playing your guard at right tackle when the other guys are suited up, to me, that just means that you don't feel 100%. He may be the swing player here. If Fathery can be the guy, or if Crownover can be the guy at right tackle, and then Reed Adams is at guard, I think that they're fine in their starting five. But if you go beyond the starting five, like, I couldn't tell you who the sixth best offensive lineman is for the Aggies, much less who the seventh or eighth guy is. And as we talked about in the previous segment with injuries, one or two of these guys are going to go down for at least a game or two. Like, that's just what this is.
That's how offensive lines work.
Yeah, I mean, this is trench warfare up there. Like, people are going to get beat up. You're going to need a seventh, eighth offensive lineman throughout a given game, much less throughout a 12-game stretch in the SEC. The depth isn't there, and they're a injury or two away from being a poor offensive line. And we've seen what happens when A&M's been a poor offensive line. They've been about a 500 football team.
Yeah, last year, 89th nationally in sacks allowed per game at 2.31. And then you mentioned it with Fathery. That's a good point, because at some point, he's part of that class that was brought in with Bryce Foster and those guys that were expected to be that next class after, the Kenyon Greens left for the NFL. At some point, you just got to be like a guy who is who he is, right? There's no more improving, right? There is no more like ceiling to be reached. And if he's just a reliable veteran that could rotate in and out, okay, cool. But maybe that's not good enough to start at right tackle in the SEC. I wouldn't be shocked if somebody like Mike Elko or Colin Klein or Adam Cushing comes in and says, just see what else we got there, right? Let's see what somebody else, Mark Nobu, looks like. Let's see what Armaj looks like. I that wouldn't surprise me. And that's an interesting point that you made about Fathery probably not being the staple starter.
Cam Dewberry is probably the seventh guy. That's probably
that's a good name. I forgot about him, actually. Yeah, that's not bad.
Speaking of teams who have started three quarterbacks in the past couple of years with offensive line question marks, I'm going to go with Texas Tech and their offensive line. One, I am not super ecstatic about them having to portal a bunch of offensive linemen in year three, a la Colorado. I am working on a piece that may or may not be published, the optimism rankings for every Texas FBS team. And we talked about in the office on Friday, and my thing for Texas Tech is going into the season, it feels like the family beach trip that's going to be perfect if the thing that has a 30% chance of happening, like a thunderstorm, doesn't happen. And that's Baron Morton getting injured.
As long as Dad doesn't get mad, everything's going to be great.
Well, it's kind of like, hey, we're perfect unless this thing that hasn't happened twice doesn't happen again. So
right.
The backup quarterback situation is not great behind Baron Morton. I think Vinny Scary is the guy at left guard who's a dog. He's kind of the alpha in that room. Other than that, I mean, Craven, what do you think about this offensive line?
Yeah, I think it comes down to who can play right tackle, and if that can keep Caleb Rogers inside, all of a sudden this Texas Tech offensive line is going to be solid. They're going to be good run blocking. They have been a good run blocking unit the first 2 years. It's been pass pro, that they've struggled in. Some of that is because they're left tackle one year and right tackle the next year, which was Caleb Rogers, just is an interior offensive lineman. I just think we can all kind of agree there. And if somebody like Ty Buchanan can step up and be a consistent right tackle, Sterling Porcher is moving to left tackle, then all of a sudden Caleb Rogers can be your swing player. He can be your starting center. He can be your starting right guard. I think if the season started today and everybody's healthy, it'd be Sterling Porcher, left tackle, Vinny Scary, left guard, Sheridan Wilson, who is a homegrown. They recruited him into year 3, kind of like what this is supposed to look like recruiting wise guy to start at center. Caleb Rogers at right guard, Ty Buchanan at right tackle. But like what we talked about with A&M, you lose one of those guys, and what do you got after that? You know, that's when it becomes, you know, you lose one of those tackles, Caleb Rogers swings out. Now all of a sudden you're, you know, deficient at tackle. You got to bring in your 6th guy to play guard. Like, it can get weird quick, and you're most likely going to have an injury. So I think right now for Tech, they've settled close to a starting 5. It's finding players 6, 7, and 8 in that rotation because they know they're going to need them.
Yeah, Sterling Porter, by the way, interesting stat on him. Played the 2nd most snaps of any offensive lineman in the country last year, according to PFF. 600, where is it right here? 629, which is kind of crazy for, I mean, again, this is Tech, a team that needs reliability, right? So like, go get the guy at Middle Tennessee State that was reliable. So that's going to be somebody that they're definitely going to be depending a lot on. By the way, I know this one's kind of a little bit of a side tangent, but have we talked enough about how Texas Tech's just saying, yeah, Jake Strong is our number 2, or Will Hammond? Like for a quarterback,
I think it's Cam Brown.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about him actually.
I think it's Cam Brown, because especially if the reason that you're moving to number 2 is your offensive line is struggling and you just got Baron Morton Horde again. Cam Brown is a guy who can come in. You can pair with Taj Brooks, and you can just become 75-25. The way I play college football 25, right? Just like just run the rock, baby. You know, like it's a little anti what Kitley wants to do on paper.
Sure.
But I think if it gets to that point, they're just going to insert Cam Brown and roll with that until Will Hammond grows up. That's just my prediction.
That's a good point. I mean, like it's a backup quarterback. So like, obviously we're not going to spend tons of time, but for a team that's had to play their backup, it was kind of an interesting story that they didn't go get somebody probably more veteran.
I have heard Will Hammond was balling in spring though.
They do
Hammond's the future, guys.
They like the guys they got.
They like Will Hammond. I am Hutto was my first job out of college, so I keep an eye on the hippos. Will Hammond's a dude.
He's great.
Absolute guy.
Yeah. All right, Craven, what's your position group?
Yeah, I'm taking the Texas secondary. We talked last podcast on the teams we think can win conference championships. I think Texas is not only the team favored or most likely to win a conference championship. I think they're the team in our state that has a chance to win a national championship. AP poll came out today. They're ranked 4th. If they don't get there, it's going to be, in my opinion, not the running back position. It's going to be the secondary. I think that they can replace the interior with just bodies. They got like 4 22 and overs. I think 5 actually, 22 and overs along the interior. So they're going to be okay there. Mostly it's cornerback, bringing Andrew Makuba in, Derek Williams having a birthday. I think all of those things help the safety position. Michael Taft is still there, being Michael Taft, like a guy I've just underrated for like my entire career. He just like gets interceptions in the biggest games possible. So I'm going to stop doing that. Michael Taft still there as a guy who can play. Jahdae Barron, probably the best player on that team. He can be your nickel back. Malik Muhammad. Here's my concern.
Yeah.
We all agree that Malik Muhammad has everything you need to be an elite cornerback, but he hadn't had to be one yet. And he's going to have to go do that in a conference that has very, very good top end wide receivers. A lot of them Texas doesn't play in the regular season, but that's a different story. So if Malik Muhammad can become that guy and Texas plays 10 on 10, great. It's the other cornerback position. Like, is that Javion Cole that they brought in? Gavin Holmes, who's kind of been there, former Wake Forest transfer. Does he kind of take that next step? Is it Kobe Black season right away? Who is a 5-star kid who is really good out of Waco Conley, but we saw him against Ryan Wingo in the spring game, and Ryan Wingo won that. To me, Texas last year was 116th against the pass. They were 3rd against the run. They need to get into the 70s. Like, they don't have to be old school Alabama secondary, shut everybody down type of thing. They're going to score points. They don't have to win 10-3, but they're going to have to be better than 116th because they don't have Byron Murphy. They don't have Tavondre Sweat. They don't have Jonathan Brooks. Like, they're going to have to get better in the secondary to win those games against Carson Beck, against Oklahoma, maybe a few others down the road if they get into the playoff.
Yeah, it feels like to me, if we were to do like a transfer portal miss, like ranking, I feel like Jabbar Muhammad to Texas was a big miss because it feels like I agree that Malik Muhammad, I think, has the talent to be that premier corner, but I think he would have benefited so much from just 1 year starting at the other spot, right? If he had 1 year with somebody else over there and he can just learn to be the number 2 guy and then just shut that side down. I do think it'll end up being Javion Cole, right? He was that all conference guy at San Jose State, I believe. Let me see. BFF said he had a 40.8 passer rating when targeted that season. So it was like, okay, so he's a good player, right? Obviously, that's a step up in talent, but I do think he'll start off over there and eventually Malik Muhammad, like he did last year, will probably work his way over there. We'll see. But with that being said, you still got to do it, right? You still got to have Malik Muhammad take this step forward. You still got to have, I think Jahdae Barron's going to be there, be a perfect safety blanket there at star. But there feels like it when you look at the ceiling of every position group, it's just not as high with the secondary, in my opinion. And it all kind of depends on Malik Muhammad reaching that ceiling, right? As opposed to like as is, I think they're good. I think they're pretty good. But like you mentioned, are they that do they have that ceiling to kind of get them to where they need to be? And they made the playoff last year, but as we saw, like there were still some holes to when they played a team that had receivers that could stretch them.
I have a Jahdae Barron theory that is not reporting, but just something I'm way too deep on the internet saying.
Yep. Yeah, he may be. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Jalen Gilbo has been taking some first team reps in media availability portions at the star position. Pete Kwiatkowski ranted and raved about Gilbo. What if Gilbo plays star and Jahdae Barron goes outside corner?
Yeah, I think it's a lot like the offensive line right now, where you're just trying to find your best 5 and put those guys. Now, Barron's probably not an NFL cornerback, but if he can play cornerback in the SEC, it also helps his draft profile. And so, like, if he can prove that out there, yeah, if they do struggle, if Cole doesn't take the step up, I do think Barron moving outside, even with just Taft, you can bring Makuba down to play nickel as well, and Taft can play deep safety next to Williams, like we saw last year. Another advantage for Texas is they don't play a ton of just crazy pass-happy teams. Right. Michigan's not going to have the most explosive vertical passing game in the world. Oklahoma's breaking in a new quarterback. We'll kind of see what that looks like. But yeah, even like teams like Kentucky, who are tough in their SEC schedule, they're not the 5 wide go. They don't have Mizzou. They don't have LSU. They don't have some of those programs that like to do it that way. I think it may mask their blemish a little bit, but it is, if they have one, if Texas has a blemish, it is the secondary for sure.
Yeah. All righty. Is there anything, by the way, before we get off this topic, is there anyone we didn't talk about? Let's just name one. Is there any we can kind of discuss right now, any position group that you're like, we should have probably talked about this or this one off the top of anybody's head right now?
Texas State linebackers. Yeah. After Brian Holloway is gone. And what was the name of the second line? Foster? Foster the second linebacker?
Yes, Foster. Dan Foster.
UTSA safeties as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. Oh God, that's a great one too. Yeah, with Rashad Wisdom and those guys being gone, those are huge. If you're talking about defenses that, especially on UTSA's side, could potentially take a step forward, a lot depends on that position, not necessarily being better because it's hard to replace Rashad Wisdom or Brian Holloway at Texas State, but like not falling off, right? You can't have those positions fall off and you expect the unit or as a whole to be better. So definitely those could definitely be massive for both those teams.
If you want to play the numbers game, Elliott Davison and Ken Robinson both got single-digit numbers, so that's a good sign. Your 2 projected starting safeties.
That is a good sign. Yeah, UTSA.
Name me a third safety at UTSA.
They just they're gonna play 95% of the game. It's fine. It's fine. They'll just no rotations.
Yeah, it's just thin up there. Not overly experienced, but they like their guys. I think Texas State's in a similar situation. I'd say Texas State corners or something that may be a thing for me as well. If we go back to the P4, TCU's defensive tackles, just what they are, moving to a 4-man, Dominic Williams at Oklahoma.
Yeah, without Williams.
And so, every team's got kind of one bugaboo probably.
Right.
So a few more that we didn't discuss. They have like 5 position groups that are bugaboos.
Right. All right. Speaking of Texas State, I hinted at the top of the show. Craven and Carter sat down with GJ Kinne, head coach of Texas State, to discuss a little bit about their season, a little bit about what's been going on with them down there in San Marcos. So without further ado, we're going to play that for you right now before we sign off. So here's our interview with GJ Kinne.
Mike Craven here, Republic of Football, with Texas State head coach GJ Kinne. Coach, how have the first 2 weeks of camp gone for the Bobcats there in San Marcos?
It's been good. We've been out on the grass fields, I think, for the first time in a number of years, and so that's been good. Been a little bit challenging at times, but I think it's maybe instilled a little bit toughness in us. Maybe we face some adversity, and you need all those things in training camp. You don't want it to be easy.
What are you looking for in that first week of camp to kind of see if the guys are locked in, or what you need to monitor? How does that go when they check in?
Yeah, I think that first week you're kind of getting their bodies right. You don't want to go, you don't want to do too much, and then you kind of self-inflicted wounds. You got hamstrings and quads and soft tissue injuries and cramps and all that. So there's that fine line of pushing their mental and physical toughness to the limit, but also being extremely smart and making sure you're taking care of the guys. And kind of letting their bodies adjust a little bit. So I think we've done a good job of that. We've stayed relatively healthy, knock on wood, and had a couple of really physical practices. And for us, I think this day and age, especially in the portal and all that, like, you got to do more team stuff. You just have to. You have to let these guys play football. And the Indy is great, and there's got to be a time for that and one-on-ones and all that. But there's the team aspect of it, and getting out there and actually playing football is really important. So we've probably done more team stuff than I have in the past. So it's been good. We got a long ways to go, but I like kind of where we're at.
And GJ, this is the first time in your coaching career that you've been to the same place for 2 years now. Has it been rewarding for you having an off season where you're staying in the same spot?
Yeah, I think so. I think being able to keep majority of my coaches was really rewarding as well, and same thing with majority of the players. So just kind of getting those guys back, coaches and players, for a second year has been good. I think obviously what they do with Coach Huth in the off season, the running, the lifting, the mental conditioning, all that matters. They're just hearing the same message, and for consecutive years is always important. And offensively and defensively, keeping the scheme relatively the same has been really good. I mean, you look at someone like Tom Brady they got to play in the same system for a number of years, and you're just better that way. I mean, the more change, the more this, the more that, the more newness is always challenging. So I think getting those guys in the same system and same strength coach and the same head coach messaging has been really good for us.
Hire Dexter McCoyle, kind of bring him up as a defensive coordinator, a relatively young coach, like yourself, like Coach Leftwich. You've known him for a long time. What gives you confidence that Dexter's, ready to be a play caller and to be the defensive coordinator at Texas State?
Yeah, I think for me with Dex, just our history together. We've been to war together. He was a really good player, but a lot of the reason he was a really good player, obviously he's 6'5" and he had talent and had 18 interceptions in college and all that. But I think a lot of it had to do with his mental ability. He's very super intelligent. He's just a winner. You look at kind of everywhere he's been, he's kind of exceeded expectations, whether that was a player, going to Arena League and proving himself there, then going to the CFL and proving himself there, getting opportunity to start games in the NFL and play there. And then, as a coach, he was actually in contract negotiations when I hired him at UIW to become like the highest CFL player defensively in the league, and chose to come to UIW and kind of start his coaching journey. And you could tell really quick. And that was something that I knew he would be amazing at, but just the relationships. But he kind of has that old school feel to him. You can tell he played for Coach Todd Graham, who recently got the TCU job. I was really excited for him. You can tell he was coached by him. You could tell he's been coached by Jess Lepp, at UTS. Like he has that feel to him, and he's just a really good coach. And for me, obviously losing your DC, somebody that's been with you for 2 years, I think our defensive scheme and the way we do things, matches with our offense and marries with our offense really well. So that was important, finding the right scheme and then really finding the right person. And feel like I was able to do both of that with Coach.
Just to follow up real quick on that, Barrick Neely was a high-level college football player. You were a high-level college football player. Leftwich played college. McCoyle played. What is the advantages of having guys who've kind of been there, done that on the highest stage on a staff at almost every position group?
Yeah, I think there's a level of that. I think you have to have a good mixture, and I think you kind of get that instant credibility at times. When you've played at a high level, and guys tend to listen to you a little bit more, and you just kind of, like you said, been there, done that. And so I think it is important, but I don't think it's the most important thing. I think you can be a really good coach, and if you haven't played at the highest level, but I think it helps, and just especially when you're coaching that position, like for me, Coach Leftwich playing the quarterback position, the psychology behind it, and all that. So I think it's important. I don't think it's the most important, but it definitely important. But Coach Neely, like if you want to ask another, where would he rank in the quarterback? Like I think he'd probably be like a 1B. I think he's a really talent. I don't know. Like if he was coming out in 2024, he'd probably be a 5-star. The dude is human. He's 6'5", 200, and he's got to be 250, and he can run. Like watching his highlights, that dude was unbelievable. So he's a really good player, and he can still spin it. We had a couple other quarterbacks out here at camp, like former quarterbacks in the state of Texas, and they were coaching running backs as well. You can kind of put it together, and him and Coach Neely were having a throw off, and I don't know. I think I'm taking my guy.
Well, GJ, everyone's talking about the new NCAA football game, and your player card from when you played came resurfaced, and you had 84 speed. And some people were saying, what, 84 speed on GJ Kinne? Can you remind people you played secondary for a stint in the NFL? Like, just talk about your NFL career playing secondary, little wide receiver too.
Yeah. So that was interesting, and the speed, it is what it is. Look at the stats. That's all I can say. The rushing stats. I think I led the team in rushing 2 years in college, and then playing in the NFL. I was fortunate enough, a little bit because of my athletic ability, but more because I knew the playbook better. I played some receiver when we signed Tim Tebow, and then every third day when Darren Sproles, he was such a weapon on offense. He was a running back, but then every third day, Chip would put him in the slot. And so I would go to running back every third day of training camp practices. And I always tell people, like, Mostert with the Dolphins, I actually got reps over Mostert in practice. That's a true story. And then that, that kind of maybe that's not a good thing, but it did happen. And then, obviously I got an opportunity with the Giants, and most people don't know that I was actually playing safety. I did the receiver workout. I didn't know. I asked my agent, am I doing quarterback? Am I doing receiver? And so I did the receiver workout, and then Steve Spagnuolo, after that workout, they're about to work out, I think 5 or 6 safeties, and asked me if I had to play safety. And I just told him, in high school on third downs and in the playoffs, I played some safety. And so he worked me out as safety, and he signed me after that, and got to spend that whole year as a safety with the Giants, and Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo, and obviously Tom Coughlin was the head coach. So learned a ton there, and just kind of being on the defensive side, kind of what that looks like, and what goes into playing defense. And I think that's really helped me in my coaching career. And it's something that I definitely go back to, especially when I'm talking to defensive coaches. I'm able to flex on them a little bit and make sure they keep them in line. I was in there with Steve Spagnuolo. The guy won, this many Super Bowls. So it's been cool.
Hey, your dad was a coach. You're a coach. You've been playing football probably since you were like 4 or 5 years old, I'd imagine. What does the sport mean to you? Why do you get so excited kind of when the whistle gets around your neck and camp can start again? Like, what are those feelings that you get each time this year?
Man, that's a good question. I think for me, I just know what football has done for me and my family, and really, I think going back to my dad's a coach, just you could see all the kids' life, especially being a high school coach. Like, this kid, didn't play football. He was in PE. Maybe he was in trouble, and what football has done for him and their lives, you still get that at the collegiate level, and just getting the opportunity to impact young men's lives on and off the field. It's been amazing. Like Maurice Linquist played for my dad, and I remember like growing up and seeing him, in the weight room, and seeing him get an opportunity to bring him to Baylor, and now him, seeing his coaching career take off, and there's a lot of guys with that same story, but it's just an unbelievable game, mental, physical toughness. My grandpa as well, just a lot of the life lessons that I instill in my players, of lessons that I've seen my dad or someone teach those guys. So man, it's a huge part of our lives.
Are the little ones already drawing up plays?
Yeah. I think we'll see what that looks like. I think that's one thing I try to do. That there's definitely an interest there. I think it's more dressing up like a football player and drawing the plays, and more actually playing football right now. So maybe they have a future in coaching. My middle one, Cooper, I think he's got a chance to kind of really do it. The oldest one, we'll see. But that's something I try not to do. Just if you want to play football, great. You want to play baseball, you want to be in the band, you want to do this, whatever. Just pick something and work really hard at it.
And GJ, another coach who had a big impact on you growing up was Jeff Traylor. You played senior year at Gilmer, went undefeated in the regular season. We saw you at THSCA coaching school. He had his arm around you. Have y'all talked at all about this week 2 matchup, UTSA versus Texas State? I know it's one that a lot of people are super excited about.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked over the summer and through the spring. Like that's always kind of the natural, like after the season, or really after we play UTSA, it's like once a week. We talk once a week. Then in the off season, that trend kind of continues, and any kind of questions or just coaching points, or hey, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And then once the summer rolls around and Jordan's in town, hey, what are y'all doing? And then once fall camp starts, it's not a ton of conversations. I sent him a picture of my water burger again the other day, and just one of those type deals, just kind of joking around. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals. Obviously, it's a huge game for everybody, but like I said, the relationship that we have is pretty special, and it's probably one of those games that neither one of us really enjoy as it's going on, but it's just part of it.
Expectations kind of through the roof for Texas State this year compared to what they've been in recent past. How do you go about managing that? Do you kind of lean into it? Do you ignore it? What are your ways to go about that as a head coach?
It's just one of those things. I think it's a good thing. I think it's good to have expectations. I think it's good, for people to be talking about Texas State and social media, and I think that's good. I do. I think that's part of it. If you want to be a big time program, you want to win championships, I think it's good to have those expectations. But at the same time, we got to go out there and practice like it. We got to go out there and do it. So we're continuing to do that. I think, we do have a really good football team. I think we have some really good players. So we got to go out there and do it. And I think we're heading in the right direction. We're not there yet. I can promise you that we're not there yet. We are still, year 2 in this deal, and we still have a lot of growth that needs to happen mentally and physically, and we're getting there. We are, but I'm glad we don't play this Saturday. We got a couple more weeks to practice.
And I saw on your Twitter account, I mean, not on your Twitter account, but the Texas State Instagram account, that all the players were doing impersonations of you. Have you watched that? And which one has the best impersonation of you?
That's good. Yeah, I liked it. You kind of realize too, now I kind of go into team meetings like I do say that, one of those type of deals. Probably Max Harris. Max Harris was really good. He was with me at UIW and then kind of back with me this year. Max was pretty good. I'd give it to Max Harris.
What was the saying that they all said that you're like, oh wait, I do say that a lot?
I think when I go into team meetings, it's like, all right, here we go. One of those type deals, like getting everyone's attention. I'm like, yeah, I catch myself saying that now.
Obviously you're offensive guy, have some experience there, calling plays and all that kind of stuff. I'm wondering how you and Mac Leftwich kind of pair up, and what makes y'all such a good combination there on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, man, that's Mac is that's my guy first and foremost. A great friend, unbelievable person. Just can't say enough good things about Mac. I think he's a real rising star. He's a unbelievable person, unbelievable coach, great quarterback coach, not just an offensive coordinator. He's a great quarterback coach and really holds those guys accountable. A coach's kid. It starts off, his dad was my offensive line coach at Tulsa in 2010. So we have that kind of common bond, I think. But I think for us, especially early on at UIW, it was one of those like, hey, we're going to come in here. We're going to build this thing together. Some things that I've really liked that I've done, whether it was Hawaii or UCF or something we've done with Gus or Chad, Coach Graham, in my past, and some of the things that he's had a lot of success with, whether it was him playing in college or him learning with Coach Morris at North Texas. I think we've been able to combine a lot of that and kind of create a really cool offense and something different than I think that a lot of people are doing. And so I think that relationship is really, really healthy. And I think he does a great job of, I try to let him kind of a lot of times do his deal. He's the coordinator, he's the coach. I think I've been in situations before where, you're kind of always looking around, especially when the head coach is the offensive guy, like, am I doing this right? Am I doing it the way he wants to do it? Kind of that psychology of playing quarterback. I think there's some psychology of the coordinator and the head coach. So I tried to let him, kind of take the reins and kind of go at the same time, be involved with, game plan and what I like, what I don't like, some of the things that we're doing and kind of having the final say, I guess, as a head coach, but at the same time, really letting him kind of take the reins and go with it. So I think that relationship is really healthy and I think the world of him and I was really glad to be able to get him back. Just like, we were recruiting our own kids in the portal. I was recruiting him to make sure he was able to come back with us. And, I think he believes in the vision and kind of what we have as a coaching staff, but also, kind of the players we had coming back. So that was really good to get Coach Leftwich back.
We've talked about your two coordinators, but one of your defensive assistants, Landry, is your brother. And I just found this out yesterday looking at your coaching staff. What's he like as a coach and how are y'all similar and different?
Yeah, I think, Landry's been really good. I put him on the defensive side of the ball. So he's working with the corners. And I think it's always good to have some of that, former offensive guys working with the defense and vice versa, defensive guys working with the offense. And he's been really good. I think the thing about Landry is he's really smart. He's a coach's kid. He's been around the game for a long time. He's with some really good coaches in college in different schemes. And, he's going to do exactly what he's told to do the first time. And he's quiet and he brings a ton of value. He's very coachable. So he's been awesome so far. I think he's got a knack just early on. I think he's got a knack with the relationship part of it and the evaluation part of it. One of his big roles is kind of that first step in the DB room of watching the guys huddles and bringing guys to the table as far as that goes. So I think he's excelled at that. And I think he's got an opportunity to be a really good coach. And I think this is just the first step, all the time and this and that. I think just kind of, a lot of firsts for him, but he's doing a really good job.
All right, Coach. We really appreciate the time. Get some sleep. I know you still got a newborn in the house plus camp starting. So appreciate you carving out a little bit of time for us in your schedule.
Yeah, appreciate you guys, and y'all do a great job, and look forward to seeing y'all. I'm assuming week 2, Mike. I'll see you there. Oh yeah, I'll see you there week 2. Right. Carter, when you come to see us?
I'm coming week 2, Coach. I'll be there.
All right, I'll see you week 2. There was a mutual connection that we had that I just figured out too. What was that?
Blake Yancey was my offensive coordinator in high school, and he was, I believe, your coach when you were in high school, right?
Yeah, he was my offensive coordinator, quarterback coach at Kinne. Yeah, he brought that up, so that's cool. Yeah, Coach Yancey's the best, man. He's a great guy.
And his son now is starting quarterback at White. Was just the offensive newcomer of the year, I think, as a freshman last year. He's looking. He's like he's slinging it in fall camp.
Oh yeah, I can't comment on that, but yeah, he's
I'll comment for you. He's a beast.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. All right. Y'all be good. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Coach.
All right. Thanks again to Texas State head coach GJ Kinne for jumping on with us. We'll be starting these interviews more as the season gets going. We'll be try to have a coach on every week or so as we lead up to it. Of course, got to get that golden star of Mike Elko, maybe eventually, maybe this season, maybe after the season. We'll see. We'll try to work it in. Basically,
Please.
Please. We've been starved for anything A&M on this show for like 10 years, it feels like. So hopefully we'll get that. We'll be able to set that, like I said, if not before the season, then definitely after the season. Okay, so that'll do it for us. We will talk to you guys next week. Thank you guys for listening. Please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. Listen to any of the Republic of Football shows. We'll be having some new shows joining the network, so we will let you get in on more of that info. Of course, as you guys saw, Bruni and Colin will no longer be doing the green room, I should say. So we'll be having a little bit of rotations in and out, but we're still going to continue the network going. Subscribe to them on their own feeds as well. We're having them post on their own feeds. You can subscribe to this one as well to keep listening. They'll be on this feed as well. But just to continue to support overall. And let's see, I'm trying to think. Mike Elko, give us a call. Rutgers, go Rutgers. And
buy my book
for us. And buy Mike Craven's book, Dave Campbell's Guide to College Football. It will be shipping out to anybody who pre-ordered. It'll be shipping out soon. We'll hopefully have ours in the office very, very soon. And we will be posting all about that over the coming weeks as the season gets going. So buy Craven's book. Did a really good job on it. Him and Will with the editing. Me, I looked at it once or twice. So definitely give those guys some help and pre-order that. We'll have that link up at texfootball.com. And we'll talk to you guys next week.